Chosen one, this is not a casual message, and it is not a soft piece of encouragement to scroll past. This is a divine emergency broadcast breaking into your life at the exact moment you needed it, because heaven has just said 4 words over your situation that change everything. I saw everything. Not part of it, not the version that was carefully rehearsed for your ears. Everything. You have not been imagining the strange shifts in your relationship, the guarded tone that crept into conversations that used to feel effortless, the sense that something between you and the person you call your soulmate no longer sits the way it once did. That is not insecurity. That is discernment, and tonight heaven is confirming it. You have felt it in small moments that were easy to dismiss individually, but impossible to ignore once you stack them together. A phone turned face down a little too quickly. A story that shifted slightly the second time it was told. A warmth that used to greet you at the door now replaced by a politeness that feels almost rehearsed. You told yourself you were overthinking it. You told yourself every relationship goes through seasons. You told yourself that trust means not asking too many questions. But something in your spirit kept refusing to settle, kept circling back to the same uneasy feeling no matter how many times you tried to reason it away. That refusal to settle was not anxiety. It was your discernment doing exactly what it was designed to do, sensing a truth your mind had not yet been given the words for. You noticed the way certain questions were answered, a half-second too quickly, as if the response had already been rehearsed before you even finished asking. You noticed the way plans changed at the last minute, with explanations that technically made sense, but never quite felt complete. You noticed the strange, specific relief that crossed their face whenever a subject got close to something and then quietly veered away. A relief you could not name at the time but felt in your body long before your mind caught up. You noticed yourself apologizing for asking simple, reasonable questions, softening your own curiosity so it would not sound like an accusation, shrinking your voice to keep a peace that was never actually peaceful to begin with. That pattern of self-editing, of managing your own instincts so someone else stays comfortable, is one of the clearest signs that your discernment has been operating correctly the entire time. The one who has been hiding this from you did not arrive as a stranger with obvious intentions. They arrived wearing the face you trust most in this world, the voice that calms you faster than any other, the presence you have built your sense of safety around. That is what makes this so disorienting. It is far easier to brace yourself against a threat that looks like a threat. It is far harder to protect your heart from someone who has spent years earning the right to be let all the way in, and who is now using that access to keep something buried that was never theirs alone to bury. This is not a message meant to plant suspicion in a healthy bond. This is a message meant to finally give language to a truth your spirit already sensed, so you can stop gaslighting yourself into silence. Understand why this message has reached you specifically tonight, out of everyone scrolling past it without a second glance. Heaven does not hand a revelation this heavy to a careless heart, because a careless heart would have closed this video within the first 10 seconds. The fact that you are still here, that something in your chest has been tightening with every sentence, that a face has already surfaced in your mind and refuses to leave, confirms what heaven already knew about you before tonight began. You are strong enough to hold this truth without shattering. You are wise enough not to weaponize it the moment it lands, and you are honest enough with yourself to finally stop performing a piece you have not actually felt in longer than you have admitted, even to yourself. If these words are landing somewhere deep and uncomfortable right now, somewhere you cannot fully explain, type the words "I saw IT" in the comments below, so heaven knows you have received this confirmation, and so this message can find the next person still trying to convince themselves that what they feel isn't real. Like this video and share it, because someone in your circle right now is doubting their own discernment the exact same way you have been, and this may be the message that finally gives them permission to trust what they already know. Here's what has actually been happening while you told yourself you were overreacting. There has been a hidden version of the story running alongside the one you were shown. A set of conversations, decisions, or moments you were never invited into, carefully kept out of view because the truth of them did not fit the image that has been maintained in front of you. This is not necessarily about a single dramatic secret. Sometimes it is one specific truth being withheld with precision. Sometimes it is a pattern of smaller omissions that, laid end to end, tell a story very different from the one you have been living inside of. Either way, the architecture is the same. Something real has been happening, and you were positioned, whether intentionally or not, to be the last to know. Picture the conversations that have happened in rooms you are not in messages you were never meant to see, in a version of honesty that was reserved for everyone except you. Picture the careful editing that happens before certain stories reach your ears. The details smoothed over, the timeline quietly rearranged, The parts that would have raised questions simply left out because leaving them out was easier than explaining them. This is not necessarily the work of a cruel person setting out to destroy you. Often it is the work of someone who convinced themselves, one small omission at a time, that a partial truth delivered with a calm voice was kinder than a full truth that might cause conflict. But kindness built on concealment is not actually kindness. It is a debt quietly accumulating interest, and debts like that always eventually come due. Understand the weight of what heaven is confirming tonight. It is not confirming that you are paranoid. It is not confirming that your relationship is built on nothing. It is confirming that your discernment has been accurate this entire time, and that the discomfort you kept trying to talk yourself out of was never irrational. Heaven does not send a message this specific, this pointed, this heavy, to someone who is simply insecure. Heaven sends it to someone who has been quietly, faithfully right, and who deserves to finally stop doubting their own perception in order to protect someone else's comfort. Even C.S. Lewis, writing through the voice of a senior demon, instructing his nephew in the art of corrupting a human life, illustrated how the most damaging deceptions rarely announce themselves loudly. They work through small, repeated choices to withhold, to reshape a story slightly in the retelling, to let a partner believe a comfortable version of events rather than risk the discomfort of full honesty. Lewis understood that intimacy makes a person more vulnerable to this kind of quiet erosion, not less, because the very trust that makes love possible is the same trust that can be quietly exploited by omission. What has been happening in your relationship is not an isolated failure of character. It is the ordinary, exhausting shape that concealment takes when someone convinces themselves that protecting you from a truth is kinder than trusting you with it. Lewis also wrote candidly about the risk built into every real bond, observing that to love another person at all is to make yourself vulnerable, and at the moment you open your heart fully to someone, you hand them the power to wound you in ways a stranger never could. That is precisely why this particular concealment cuts so deep. A lie from someone who means nothing to you barely registers. A lie, or even a carefully managed silence, from the person you call your soulmate lands in the exact place you left unguarded because you trusted them enough to leave it open. Lewis understood that the alternative, sealing your heart off so nothing can ever reach it again, is not safety. It is a kind of slow death disguised as protection. Heaven is not asking you to armor yourself permanently tonight. Heaven is asking you to let this truth reach you fully, grieve what needs to be grieved, and then choose, deliberately, whether the love in front of you is worth rebuilding on honest ground. Have you cried in a bathroom with the door locked, the fan running so no one would hear, wondering why a bond that should feel safe, instead, feels like walking on a floor you are not sure will hold your weight? Have you lain awake replaying a conversation, searching for the exact moment the tone shifted, convinced you were losing your mind for even noticing? Have you smiled through a dinner, a phone call, a shared laugh, while some quiet part of you kept whispering that something underneath all of it did not add up? You were not losing your mind. You were living inside a story that had a hidden chapter, sensing the outline of pages you had not yet been shown. That ache in your chest, that unexplainable heaviness that shows up when you least expect it, has been the emotional residue of carrying a truth you were never given permission to know. Notice also what has been working to keep you quiet about all of this. It rarely arrives as a direct command to stay silent. It arrives as a thought that sounds almost reasonable, telling you that bringing it up will only start a fight you cannot win, that you have no real proof, that you will look insecure or dramatic if you say anything out loud. It arrives as exhaustion, convincing you it is easier to let the uneasy feeling pass than to have the conversation that might finally unravel it. And it works on both sides at once, whispering to you that silence keeps the peace, while whispering to the one hiding the truth that silence keeps them safe. Recognizing that pattern is not paranoia. It is the first step in refusing to let a comfortable silence protect a truth that was never meant to stay buried forever. Here is the part of tonight's message that changes everything. Heaven is not merely observing your pain from a distance. Heaven has been present in every hidden conversation, every quiet decision, every moment that was deliberately kept out of your sight. The judge of all the earth, the one who misses nothing and forgets nothing, is saying tonight with absolute authority, I saw everything. Every word spoken when they thought no one who mattered was listening. Every choice made in a moment they assumed would never surface. Every carefully worded half-truth designed to keep the peace at the cost of your right to know your own life. None of it happened outside of divine witness. What was hidden from you was never hidden from heaven, and what heaven has fully seen, heaven is now moving to expose, not to destroy your relationship out of cruelty, but to free you from building your future on a foundation that was never fully honest to begin with. If something in you just went completely still, if the weight of those 4 words, "I saw everything," just landed somewhere your defenses could not block, comment the word EX posed below so heaven can confirm this word has reached exactly who it was meant for. Share this with someone who has been quietly doubting their own perception in a relationship that no longer feels like home the way it used to. Now stay with me, because heaven is not only revealing a wound tonight, heaven is revealing a way through it. Consider Joseph, sold into slavery by the very brothers who should have protected him, spending years in a foreign land carrying a story no one around him fully understood. When the moment of confrontation finally arrived, he did not need to manufacture justice with his own hands, because the truth itself, carried by God's timing, had already done the work of exposing what was hidden and repositioning Joseph exactly where he needed to be. Joseph later told his brothers in a statement, "Heaven has repeated over situations like yours ever since, that what they intended for harm, God intended for good." That is not a comforting slogan meant to soften your pain. It is a legal precedent from heaven's own court, applied directly to what you are walking through right now. Notice also what Joseph did not do in the years before that reunion. He did not spend his time in Egypt secretly plotting how he would punish his brothers the moment he had power over them. He built, he served, he grew in wisdom, even while carrying an injustice that would have justified a lifetime of bitterness. And when the moment of truth finally arrived, he was able to meet it with clarity instead of rage, because he had not let the waiting season poison who he was becoming. That is the model heaven is holding up in front of you tonight. Not passivity, not pretending the wound does not exist, but a refusal to let someone else's concealment determine the condition of your own heart while you wait for truth to fully surface. While you have been carrying the weight of a truth you sensed but could not name, the one who has been concealing it has not been walking through this unaffected. Concealment carries its own cost, even for the one doing the concealing. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from managing 2 versions of a story at once, keeping track of what has been said to whom. Catching yourself before a slip reveals more than intended. That exhaustion shows up as irritability over nothing, as a shorter temper, as a strange defensiveness whenever the subject gets too close to the truth without ever quite touching it. It shows up as overcompensating kindness in one moment and unexplainable distance in the next. The natural rhythm of someone managing guilt they have not yet found the courage to name out loud. You may have noticed this without understanding it. Now you do. There is also a quieter cost that concealment carries, one that has nothing to do with getting caught and everything to do with what constant vigilance does to a person over time. Keeping a hidden version of the truth requires a kind of ongoing performance, remembering which details were shared with whom, staying alert for questions that get too close, managing a low hum of tension that never fully switches off even in ordinary, peaceful moments. That hum wears on a person. It shows up as sleep that no longer feels restful, as a mind that cannot fully relax even during good moments together, as a strange guilt that surfaces at unexpected times, during a kind gesture, a shared laugh, a quiet evening that should feel easy but instead feels heavier than it should. You are not imagining that heaviness either. It has been present in the room with both of you for longer than you realized. Heaven is not only asking you to feel this tonight, heaven is equipping you to recognize it clearly going forward, because concealment rarely announces itself with a confession. It shows up in a pattern of small, easy-to-miss behaviors that only make sense once you know what you are looking for. It looks like someone who has become oddly generous with affection right after a moment of distance, as if trying to balance an invisible scale only they can see. It looks like someone who answers questions about their day in more detail than the question actually required, over-explaining in a way that sounds like preparation rather than memory. It looks like a sudden new privacy around devices that never used to matter, passwords that appeared out of nowhere, notifications quietly silenced. None of these signs alone proves anything with certainty. But together, in a relationship heaven has already placed under this spotlight, they confirm what your spirit has already been telling you. This is not a message inviting you to become an investigator, combing through every word for hidden meaning, treating every silence as proof of betrayal. Suspicion turned into obsession will not bring you peace, and it is not what heaven is asking of you tonight. What heaven is asking is far simpler and far more freeing. Stop doubting what you already know in your spirit. Stop performing calm you do not feel in order to keep an uncomfortable peace. Stop apologizing internally for noticing what was always there to be noticed. The exposure that is coming will not require you to dig, to trap, to manipulate a confession out of anyone. Truth carried by heaven's timing has a way of surfacing on its own, in a conversation you did not orchestrate, in a detail that finally does not add up in someone else's telling, in a moment where the truth simply becomes too heavy for the one carrying it to hold any longer. There is a promise written over situations exactly like this one, that no weapon formed against you will succeed, and every voice that rises to falsely define your story will ultimately be silenced by truth itself. This is the inheritance of those who choose to walk in integrity even while surrounded by concealment. That promise does not mean nothing hard will happen. It means whatever has been hidden will not be allowed to permanently determine your worth, your peace, or your future. The weapon was real, the concealment was real, but it will not be permitted to stand as the final word over your life. As this exposure draws closer, there are things heaven is asking you to do, and things heaven is asking you to release. Turn your pain into prayer instead of into a plan for confrontation built purely on anger. Every time the suspicion rises and your mind starts constructing accusations you may never actually speak aloud, hand that energy to God instead of feeding it. Let it refine your discernment rather than corrode your peace. There is a real difference between rehearsing an argument in the shower for the 10th time and quietly asking God to prepare your heart for whatever conversation is coming. The first drains you before the moment even arrives. The second steadies you for it. Second, give yourself permission to trust what you already know without demanding proof before you are allowed to feel it. You do not need a confession to validate an instinct heaven has already confirmed tonight. So many people spend months, sometimes years, waiting for undeniable evidence before they will honor what their own spirit told them. Clearly, the very first week, something changed. You do not owe anyone that kind of self-doubt. Your discernment does not need a courtroom's worth of evidence to be trusted. Third, resist the urge to secretly investigate everything, checking messages, tracking movements, turning your home into a courtroom you preside over alone. That path leads to a different kind of exhaustion, one that steals your peace long before it delivers you any clarity, and it often gives the other person exactly the narrative they need, that you are the suspicious one, the controlling one, deflecting attention away from the very truth you are trying to uncover. Fourth, prepare your heart, not for revenge, but for an honest conversation whenever the moment heaven has been arranging finally arrives, a conversation rooted in truth rather than accusation, in clarity rather than chaos. Decide in advance the kind of person you want to be in that conversation, regardless of how the other person responds, because you will remember how you carried yourself in that moment for far longer than you will remember their initial reaction. Fifth, protect your own integrity through this process. However this unfolds, you will not regret having handled it with a steady heart rather than a bitter one. Do not let someone else's dishonesty rewrite your own character. You can hold someone accountable for concealment without becoming someone who deals in manipulation and revenge to match it. Understand clearly that what is unfolding is not a punishment for anything you did wrong. You did not cause this concealment by asking too many questions or caring too deeply. You are not required to shrink your intuition to make someone else's dishonesty more comfortable to maintain. What feels like the ground shifting beneath you is not the end of your ability to trust. It is the painful, necessary process of your trust being redirected toward what is actually true, rather than what was simply presented conveniently. What feels like heartbreak is not the final chapter. It is the honest chapter finally being written after too long spent living inside an edited version of your own story. There is one more thing you are not expecting to hear tonight, and it may be the most important part of this entire message. Whatever is revealed in the days ahead, your worth was never dependent on someone else's honesty. You were valuable before this relationship, and you remain valuable regardless of what surfaces next. If truth restores what has been damaged, let it restore something built on honesty this time, not on the comfortable silence that got you here. And if truth reveals that restoration is not what heaven has planned for this particular bond, know that you are not being abandoned in that outcome. You are being protected from building the rest of your life on a foundation that was already cracked long before tonight. There is one more truth heaven wants you to sit with before this message ends. One easy to miss if you are only listening for the pain and not for what is quietly being built underneath it. This season, as unwanted as it is sharpening a kind of discernment in you that will protect every relationship you enter for the rest of your life, not only this one. You will never again be quite as easy to deceive as you were before tonight. Not because you have become cynical, but because you have learned to trust the quiet signals your own spirit sends you long before your mind can fully explain them. That is not a small thing. That is a permanent upgrade to how you move through every close relationship you will ever have, and it was forged, whether you wanted it or not, in exactly this fire. If this word has confirmed something you have been too afraid to say out loud, comment the words "I trust my discernment" below, and let that declaration become the moment you stop apologizing for noticing what heaven has now confirmed was real all along. Like this video, subscribe if this is the first time these words have reached you, and share it with someone who has been quietly gaslighting themselves into ignoring what their own spirit has been trying to tell them for months. Let us pray together now. Father, I come to you carrying a weight I have tried to explain away for far too long. Thank you for the courage to finally name what my spirit has sensed, instead of continuing to silence it to protect someone else's comfort. I lift up my relationship to you tonight. Every hidden conversation, every quiet decision, every truth that has not yet reached the surface. You said you saw everything, and I choose to believe that nothing has escaped your attention, even the parts of this story I have not been shown yet. Lord, give me the strength to face whatever truth is coming without losing myself in the process. Do not let this season make me bitter, suspicious of everyone, or closed off to love in the future. Instead, let it make me wiser, clearer, and more attuned to what real honesty feels like. I release the anger that wants to build a case in my mind before I even know the full truth. I release the fear of what confrontation might cost me. I release the exhausting need to investigate every detail on my own strength. Father, deal gently but truthfully with the one who has been carrying this concealment. Where there is fear keeping them silent, replace it with courage to finally speak. Where there is pride protecting a false image, bring the kind of conviction that leads to honesty rather than deeper hiding. I am not asking you to destroy anyone. I am asking you to bring truth into the light in a way that honors both of us, even if that truth changes the shape of what we have built together. Give me discernment in the conversation that is coming. Give me words that seek clarity rather than cruelty, and give me the wisdom to know the difference between a mistake that can be rebuilt from and a pattern that cannot be safely trusted again. Show me clearly which one I am facing, and give me the courage to act on that clarity instead of talking myself out of it the way I have so many times before. Heal whatever has already been quietly broken in me from carrying this alone. Restore my confidence in my own perception so I never again talk myself out of what I clearly sense to protect someone else's version of peace. Whatever the outcome, let my heart remain soft enough to still love well, and let my discernment remain sharp enough to never again ignore what you have already shown me. I trust your timing over my impatience. I trust your truth over any comfortable illusion, and I choose right now to walk forward in faith rather than fear. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. Chosen one, hear this final word before you go. You are not the one who should be carrying shame tonight. You are not the one who needs to apologize for finally naming what you have known in your spirit for longer than you let yourself admit. Whatever truth is standing at the edge of your story right now, walk toward it with your head up, because heaven has already declared that it sees you, it has always seen you, and it is not going to leave you to face what comes next without support. You are crossing a line tonight, from a person who quietly doubted their own perception to one who trusts it fully, from someone who managed their own instincts to protect someone else's comfort to someone who honors what their spirit has been trying to tell them all along. That shift will not only serve you in this relationship, it will serve you in every close bond you build for the rest of your life, because you will never again be quite as willing to talk yourself out of a truth you can already feel. Carry that clarity gently. Use it to build something honest, not to punish anyone for what has already happened. Whatever comes next, you are no longer walking into it blind, and you are no longer walking into it alone. Comment the words "I saw everything" below if this message has confirmed what your spirit already knew. Like this video so it reaches someone else still doubting their own discernment tonight. And subscribe so the next word heaven has for you does not pass you by the way this one almost did.